Ain't gonna let nobody load it. Turn me round, turn me round, turn me round.
Determined to change the way the African American community was being oppressed in the United States, Bayard Rustin was accredited as being a leader, a heroic prodigy, and an overachiever according to the civil rights movement during the mid-1950s. His analytical leadership style of combining governance, peace, and nonviolence helped him to make cognitive, complex decisions while organizing the historic March on Washington, which stood for jobs and freedom. Bayard Rustin was born on March 17, 1912 in Westchester, Pennsylvania. Bayard Rustin was raised by his grandparents who shared collectively a history of racial discrimination. His grandfather, a former slave, and Julia Davis, a civil rights activist. Julia Davis was an affiliate for the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, and often exposed Bayard to the many collaborations with civil rights members through rallies and community events. With the combined teachings of Julia and being a nonviolent Quaker, Rustin had the ability to handle disagreements diplomatically, which would later be useful while leading the activists during the March on Washington. As a teenager playing left tackle on the high school football team, Rustin experienced racism when he was refused service at a restaurant while playing out of town in West Virginia. After this incident, Bayard became determined to pursue the idea of justice and equality. He believed society's refusal to acknowledge his dignity as a human being was unjust. His initial step was to attend Cheney State Teachers College, a school that offered activist training. After attending Cheney College, he moved to Harlem, New York, and joined the Young Communist League in 1936, as they believed in equality for all citizens. In the early 1940s, as the U.S. entered World War II, Rustin abandoned the Communist political party since their primary focus was the war, instead of focusing on the social injustices of the time. Afterwards, he decided to become affiliated with the Socialist Party as he believed they were more ethical and were characterized as having social ownership and racial equality. Being a part of this party, Rustin met civil rights mentor A. Philip Randolph. Philip stressed to him the importance of nonviolence while coordinating ideas into action. Bayard combined the teachings of A. Philip Randolph, Mahatma Gandhi, and his own pacifist ways to create his own method of responding to challenges in a positive manner while protesting. Nonviolence is the greatest force at the disposal of mankind. It is mightier than the mightiest weapon of destruction devised by the ingenuity of man. In 1942, fellow activists George Hauser, James Farmer, Bernice Fisher, and Bayard Rustin formed the Congress of Racial Equality. CORE was a pacifist civil rights group whose mission statement states that people have the ability to self-govern freely. In 1956, on the advice of labor leader and activist A. Philip Randolph, Rustin traveled to Alabama to lend support to Dr. King and the Montgomery bus boycott. While remaining out of the spotlight, Rustin played a critical role in introducing King to Gandhi's teachings while writing publicity materials and organizing carpools. Rustin's relationship with King evolved over many collaborative projects, including the legendary 1963 March on Washington. The March on Washington was idealized by A. Philip Randolph, who then recruited Bayard. The two began making plans to commemorate the centennial anniversary of the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation. Without hesitation, Rustin gathered the Big Six team, who were comprised of pacifist civil rights leaders such as Martin Luther King Jr., A. Philip Randolph, James Farmer, John Lewis, Roy Wilkins, and Whitney Young. Randolph knew Bayard could organize the march successfully within all 8 weeks, as well as instill the ideal of nonviolence. Contrary to Randolph, Wilkins and Young opposed appointing Rustin to head the march since Rustin served prison time during World War II as a conscientist objector, and the fact that he was a homosexual who had once been arrested on a morals charge. They viewed Rustin as a social pariah and feared that opponents would use Rustin's past to smear the march. Randolph, King, and Farmer defended Rustin. He is the one who can get it done. Finally, a compromise was reached. Randolph headed the march and Rustin would be his deputy. However, the Big Six knew Rustin would be heading the march. He is Mr. March himself. We couldn't do it without him. Rustin planned, created, and produced flyers and signs for all the participants, along with buttons that were given to those who were unable to attend. Rustin gathered donations, and with the proceeds, he provided transportation to those who wished to attend and were economically impoverished. Bayard and the other organizers knew in order to create a firm stand on civil rights, they needed to choose an area in which the march would be significant in meaning. Their final choice was the Washington Monument. The historic monument lies between another major monument that defines America, the Lincoln Memorial. The location was a symbolic representation since Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation was what the Civil Rights Movement stood for. 77 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty, and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. This message was transcended in Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech at the march, when he spoke of the architects of our republic writing the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, that all men would be guaranteed the unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The March on Washington was a complete success, with over 250,000 attendees, and as a result, Jim Crow laws were abolished the following year in 1964.
The fact that so many Americans came from diverse backgrounds pointed to their frustration and their hope that change would come about.
Bayard Rustin changed the face of the civil rights movement by introducing pacifism as a method of protest. Rustin casted an important legacy in the United States as he contributed to present-day racial equality. In 1953, Rustin's fate was sealed as the black leader destined to be closeted behind the scenes. As a result of his sexual preference, many of our history books chose to omit his legacy, even though his actions were meritorious. In 2013, President Obama, realizing Rustin's leadership role and legacy on the March on Washington and his fight for racial and economic justice, as well as supporting gay rights, posthumously granted Bayard Rustin with the Presidential Medal of Freedom. The nation's highest civilian honor award was given to Rustin's lifelong partner, Walter Neagle.
I am not ready to die. I want no Negro to die. I want no human being to die or to be brutalized, because I thoroughly believe that this struggle can be won without brutalization.
If we desire a society in which men are brothers, then we must act towards one another with brotherhood. If we can build such a society, then we would have achieved the ultimate goal of human freedom.